want to just first clarify for us the role that you want us to play and who you are before we start the timer?
I address that whenever.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to press it. Are you going to do it too?
I shall.
Great. Good morning, Zara Board of Directors. My name is Megan Mulroy, and we are a third-party consulting group that you've asked here today to evaluate policies that you've implemented recently to scale back on your waste and increase sustainability of your business model. We'll also look at the viability of future goals that you have set. Clothing waste is a huge problem for Zara because the fast fashion model, as it stands now, is not sustainable for business. In order for you to stay the top producer of affordable quality fashion at a low price, you'll need to really look at the sustainability issue that plagues the fast fashion sector. The problem as it stands right now is that about 13 million tons of textile waste was produced in 2013 according to the US EPA. This is about 9% total of municipal solid waste in the United States. And from the period of 1999 to 2009, this increased by 40%, while the rate of recycling or diversion from these landfills only increased by 2%. This consumption cycle just perpetuates the damage to the environment. The effects on the environment don't only stand with the production or manufacturing side. Cotton is the most widely used fiber in fast fashion, and it accounts for 1/4 of the pesticide use in the United States. So we need to move away from using cotton in the fast fashion sector because it's also not recyclable. Most of the secondhand clothes that we donate or try to recycle end up going to other countries, and it ends up in their waste cycle, and it's not sustainable as it stands now. The imports of secondhand clothing are also slowing down to these countries. Africa used to be one of the largest importers of secondhand clothing, and now due to certain import restrictions and the introduction of cheaper, newer clothes coming from Asia, we are not able to send those clothes to these countries anymore. Also, when these clothes do end up in landfills, the synthetic fibers that they are made out of are not going to be able to break down. They don't go into the environment. They're not biodegradable. So this is just increasing the amount of land that is going to be needed for these landfills in the future. This consumption cycle is growing at an abnormal rate. Instead of 4 seasons now, they're about 52 to keep up with changing trends. So this model that we have as it stands is not going to be sustainable for very long. Some of the solutions that you, Zara, have already implemented are using the fibers known as Tencel and Refibro, which are just brand names for the lyocell fiber, which is made out of plant cellulose. You are also collecting unwanted clothing at stores for donation. This has been working in a small amount for the short-term solution. However, we need to look at a longer-term solution that makes you more accountable and responsible towards the environment. This will be to phase out cotton. This will lead to a completely upcycled clothing line that can be made from Tencel and Refibro, cutting down on waste that goes to landfills. And that will ultimately lead to a completely circular model with little to no waste. In order to do this, you've come up with the Right to Wear campaign that says your aim is to create beautiful, ethical, quality products that are not only right for your customers, but right for people that work for you, the environment, and right for the environment. The aim is to create fashion that's right to wear. Zara plans on closing the loop by 2020. This means no waste is to be sent to landfills in 2 years, either from the manufacturing side or from clothes or post-consumer waste. In order to do this, you've come up with the Join Life collection, which is made out of the Tencel and Refibra, that is a recyclable fiber made from recycled fibers. So this is going towards your circular closing the loop cycle. But this Join Life collection only accounts for a minuscule amount of your sales. In terms of the sales, it's only about 6.35 million compared to the about 30 million units of cotton products that are sold by Zara. And we need to move towards just using those exclusively instead of cotton. Zara's mission statement mentions bringing attractive and responsible fashion and improving quality of customer service as their priorities. They also emphasize 4 keywords such as beauty, clarity, functionality, and sustainability. So it's clear that Zara really cares about these issues and holds them as part of their business promise to their customers. As part of the Right to Wear campaign, they also emphasize a traceability aspect. In order to provide customers with sustainable clothing, there needs to be systems in check so that customers know where these things come from. Right now, the apparel industry is so complex, it's really hard for people to know where everything is coming from, including suppliers on the manufacturing side and into factories. And it's hard to hold them to the standards of your own business because of this complexity. This is the label that Zara uses now for their Join Life collection, which is your sustainability collection. It says that it's ecologically grown, but there's no checks in place to know that that's actually how it is produced. There are 3 other labels that Zara could use instead of this one that they've come up with on their own. Transparency has been shown to increase the customer's willingness to buy. These are the 3 labels that we advocate for. 2 of them are international, the Fair Trade and Ecotex Made in Green label, and they both are tested for harmful substances that are made with minimal harm to the environment, and they promote biodiversity. And they also advocate for safe workplaces and improving worker and living conditions as well. They also have accountability standards, and they're verified by third parties. The Ecotex label has a unique ID number that you can plug in on the internet, and it's going to tell you every step of production that it went through, where it came from. So Zara can hold their manufacturers to the code of conduct standards that they require now. For the fair trade one, there's also proper controls and very strict rules in order to have that on your product. In the EU, right now there's a similar one, and that's also independently verified. The tinsel and refiber that's used in the Join Life collection already has the Fair Trade and EU Eco labels. So Zara would have to take no extra steps for that, and it would be a better label and show more accountability towards your shareholders and customers. All right. For this, the relevant statutes are the Part 303 of Rules and Regulation for the Textile Fiber Products Identification Act and the Regulation number 1007/2011 of the European Parliament. Both of these just require that you label what fiber content is in the garment. So you're already doing that. It's already labeled, but you can take an extra step to show that these are produced sustainably. There's also the FTC Act that prevents misbranding or any unlawful advertising. This comes up when you're using the old label for Zara that doesn't have any accountability standards. Nordstrom and Bed Bath & Beyond have had trouble with this and faced monetary penalties in the past. They've labeled things with the fiber content of bamboo when it actually had no bamboo in it. So in order to prevent this, those accountability labels can eliminate that, and they're also already approved by Tinsel and used by Tinsel and Refibra. So in order to stay away from that and claiming these green initiatives, we need to use these labels to avoid any liability for false advertising in the future. And Tinsel and Refibra already use this. So to stay ahead of the curve, when in green and sustainable fashion, they'll ultimately come down to requiring these standards, and we can already be doing them by using only Tinsel and Refibra as our fibers for our Join Life collection, or your Join Life collection. And here's Alvaro with the financial portion.
The global consumer is becoming increasingly aware of the ethical implications of their consumption habits. Today, everyone has the ability to look up information on the entire production process for any product they use and preferable alternatives. In addition to this, consumers are engaging through social medias and other information technologies and constantly exchanging commentary on the products they use and the reasons for using them. Evidence of this emerging conscientious consumer has been shown by the Nielsen survey, which showed that 66% of consumers in 2015 were willing to pay more for sustainable goods. And this was a poll of 30,000 people that was conducted. And this number is up from 55% in 2014 and 50% in 2013. Even more importantly for Zara, members of the new generation, millennials and Gen Zs, the self-professed target demographic of Zara, are even more ethically aware and conscientious consumers. This study conducted by Pew Research showed that millennials are 62.5% more likely to believe that there's solid evidence of global warming than members of the silent generation, the oldest generation, and 38% more likely to believe this than members of the baby boomer generation, which is evidence of their ethical awareness. Not only are they more ethically aware, they're also more willing to pay more for sustainable goods. The same Nielsen study showed that 73% of millennials and 72% of members of Generation Z are willing to pay more for sustainable goods. In light of this information, we propose an extremely cost-effective, essentially free, very easy to implement 3-part plan. We need to increase the use of sustainable materials such as Tencel. Tencel is infinitely more sustainable than cotton. And not only this, as demand grows for high quality products that are also ethical, Tencel will be the material of the future. If we want to use a material like Tencel, we also need to label effectively. Labeling is very important, and Zara has already recognized this. That's why Zara has tried to develop their own label for their Join Life collection. However, there are a lot of legal ramifications to using questionable language in development of a new label. The beauty of using Tencel products is that they are already certified with the Fair Trade label and with the EU Eco label for textiles. Therefore, these labels have much more universally recognized recognition already. So they'll be much more effective, and also this prevents Zara from having to develop and promote their own label, which probably won't be as effective and could have legal ramifications. The third thing we need to do is upcycle production and consumption. Now, we'll do this by using sustainable materials such as Tencel, which are compostable and recyclable and can be reintroduced into the production process. Another thing we need to do is we need to refine our production methodology, and we will discuss how we can do that. And the third thing we need to do is we need to diversify services by adding services that give customers the ability to engage in sustainable consumption practices. So, Tencel has obvious benefits for the consumer. For one, it's more breathable, it shrinks less, it has higher rates of perspiration absorption, and it wrinkles less. But most importantly, it's ultimately sustainable and scalable. Tencel uses 20 times less water than cotton in its production. In addition to this, Tencel is FSC certified, which means that they source all of their wood from plantations and forests that aren't in danger of deforestation. So we don't have to worry about the ethical problems of deforestation. In addition to this, as the demand grows for Tencel, more plantations will pop up growing these trees, which will actually mitigate some of the climate change effects of CO2 in our atmosphere. So, we know that consumers are more ethically conscientious and willing to pay more for ethical products, but they need to be able to identify which products satisfy their needs and preferences. This is why labeling is so important. The average consumer is willing to pay 20 to 30% more for products with a label indicating ethical production. Interestingly, this premium offsets increases in production, ensuring an immediate return on your investment. So Zara has already tried using their joint collection label, but what we need to do is use Tencel so that we can use already established labels that Tencel is already certified for. Investing in Tencel is a great idea. Now, Tencel initially seems to be more costly. It costs 50 to 100% more just for the raw material production. However, material comprises only 20% of the final cost, the final retail cost of an item. So essentially, the final retail price of the item is only going to be 10 to 20% more. But we've already shown that if you label strategically, then consumers are willing to pay 20 to 30% more for these products, rendering these sustainable products even more lucrative. Brands with especially ethically conscientious customer bases, such as Zara, who's targeting especially this emerging demographic of the new generation, can charge even more. However, they're not even having to charge even more. Many of the products for sale by Zara that are made from Tencel are the exact same price as other garments. You can look this information up yourself. They're extremely affordable. Anyone can afford them for any purpose. Another important thing, Tencel is trending right now. So in this age of constant exchange of information where Kylie Jenner and celebrities are tweeting about what products they're using and why, the fact that Tencel is a trending product right now is especially important. 51% of US consumers say that they're loyal to brands that consistently offer the latest products and services. Zara has the opportunity to be the preeminent supplier of sustainable materials such as Tencel and essentially become the Apple of sustainable fashion. Now, if Zara is to maximize their sustainability and their profit, they must operate by a circular model instead of a linear model. The problem with a linear model is the waste that's generated throughout the production process, it ends up in landfills or oceans or people's attics, right? And this is because it uses materials that can't be brought back into the cycle, such as Tencel. Now, if we use Tencel and if we refine our production methodology, then we'll be able to close the circuit of consumption and production, and this will render us much more sustainable and even more profitable. So, upcycling and production can be achieved in two ways. The first option is a very, very cheap option that could be implemented immediately. So it's a short-term solution. We can use an external auditing company such as UpMade, who already has had great success with a number of companies. The reason it's so cheap is their business model includes, they sell a software that you can then use, and you input information about your production process into the software yourself. So you don't have to pay for the travel expenses of the personnel that's going to come out and audit your production process, right? Now, a more effective long-term solution is to have your own internal upcycling initiative by introducing a new employment sector, right, dedicated to sustainable products and refining the production methodology. This is something that Mud Jeans has done, and look at the success that they've had. Almost 100% reduction in the use of water, chemicals, and waste produced, and in CO2 produced. Now, one way we can upcycle consumption is to give customers an option to engage in sustainable practices. The way we can do this, we've already started collecting waste, but we can collect much more waste. H&M since 2013 has collected the equivalent of 270 million t-shirts. And we really need to catch up in our waste collection. And this would be so easy to accomplish. All we need to do is have a bin at a store. This would make customers feel better about themselves and better about the company. Another thing we can do, we can offer repair services such as Patagonia is doing. Patagonia is repairing 40,000 garments annually, and they have this truck that goes around the country promoting the service, and it's become extremely popular. Another thing we can do, Mud Jeans is obviously cognizant of this emerging market and trying to capitalize on it. That's why they're offering a leasing service in which you can, for €7 a month, lease 3 pairs of jeans, and then if you get sick of that pair of jeans, you can just return it and get a different style, right? So instead of wasting this, you're able to bring it back, you're able to return it to the company for someone else that may want to use it. And fashion continuously repeats itself, so it's probable that someone else will want to wear those jeans, or maybe just someone that has a different style, right? The best part about diversifying services is that you can also include incentives for subsequent purchases. So 85% of Generation X consumers report that discounts influence their last purchase. You can give them coupons for bringing in clothes for repair or for collecting waste, and that'll make it much more likely that they'll purchase products from you in the future. Also, 40% of customers satisfied with purchases will keep shopping with the company. So the more opportunities for interaction with the company, I mean, as you all probably know, if a customer has purchased an item once, twice, or 3 times, the likelihood that they'll return is exponential. So, if Zara is to maximize its sustainability and its profit, we really need to take these initiatives, and we need to scale these methods as much as we can, eventually switching to exclusive use of tinsel. Now for Alana for our ethical portion.
Thank you, Alvaro. After hearing about Zara's problems and our solutions, you may be wondering, why does this matter ethically? Zara and your parent company, IBECC, have already shown that you have high ethical standards, and this can be seen in your campaign about the right to wear, as well as IBECC's chair saying, we are working for our customer to generate value beyond the realm of purely economic. You have also shown that you are willing to pursue environmental actions in sustainability. However, we have shown that there are more solutions and options available to you. By choosing these options, you will show your consumers that these statements are more than just a proposal, but an action. Why? Why should Zara care more about the environment? This can be seen in a 3-part plan. 1 is to preserve Zara's strong character, 2 is to avoid moral outrage, and 3 is to preserve our communities. Character. Why is character important? How Zara portrays themselves and what they stand for says a lot about the company's character. Like previously mentioned, you hold yourselves to high ethical and sustainable standards. And this can be seen in your statement about preserving biodiversity, caring about the consumption of waste and energy. In this, you are bound to this statement. You need to show that your character is part of this statement and you must uphold it. And this statement shows virtues or important attributes such as integrity, responsibility, honesty. But how does this translate into character that consumers can see? Like previously mentioned, higher moral standards can result in increased loyalty by a consumer. And higher moral standards can also result in a consumer being willing to pay more for environmentally sustainable clothing. But talking about Zara's character is not as important as telling you why it ethically matters. Consumers care about a company's character because they want a company with moral standards and integrity, and this can be seen in boycotting. And boycotting being the refusal to buy goods as punishment or protest. A customer will boycott a company that they see going against their moral standards. So it's important to keep your moral standards high in order to keep your customers happy, and in order, more than that, but in order to uphold ethical responsibility. You build good character by doing good actions. The second reason why Zara should care more about the environment is to avoid moral outrage. Moral outrage is anger created by a threat to personal justice, fairness, and not doing harm. Like previously mentioned, the younger generation's increased awareness about global warming can create moral outrage if Zara does not uphold to the environmental standards that you have presented. So, Zara needs to uphold these standards in order to keep their consumers from becoming outraged. Capital. Why is capital important? Capital can affect revenue as well as reputation. The kind of capital we're talking about needs to be defined, because we're calling financial capital the monetary or buying power a consumer has, and we're calling social capital the social power a consumer has. So a consumer has social power in the form of Facebook, Instagram accounts, Twitter accounts, Snapchats. So these sites and apps allow the younger generation a wider audience to hear their ideas, both positive as well as negative. So it is important to remember that social power matters, and this can be seen in the recent H&M scandal. H&M, a fashion brand, had on their online website a picture of a young African-American boy with a hoodie that said, coolest monkey in the jungle. This created worldwide moral outrage due to the possible racial undertones. Protests sparked up, influential celebrity ties were broken, and moral outrage was all over social media. Social power mixed with moral outrage can affect revenue and reputation. And it's important to remember, the younger generation might have social power now, but they will have the buying power in the future. So it's about longevity, not just about the here and now. But what can hold both social and financial capital? Loyalty. Loyalty to a company is extremely important, both the company's loyalty to the consumer, as well as the consumer's loyalty to the company. Apple is known for their extreme customer loyalty. They have very high retention rates, and a customer of Apple will wait out the door, in a line out the door to buy the newest version of the iPhone. But a company that does not show loyalty to their consumer can be seen in Snapchat. Snapchat is an app that allows users to share photos, videos, message one another, and stay up to date with news and current news and what's going on in the world. Snapchat recently changed their format to function more lucratively for advertisers. This created unhappiness among their users, and it prompted Kylie Jenner, a celebrity of 25.2 million Twitter followers, to tweet about how she doesn't use the app with the new format anymore. Snapchat stocks dropped $1.3 billion over one single tweet. Social capital mixed with moral outrage can strongly affect the revenue and reputation of a company. Simple acts of reciprocity are essential to an ethical framework. In order for Zara to know that they have their customers' loyalty is to show that they have loyalty to their customer and will uphold to the ethical and environmental standards that they have presented. The third reason why Zara should care more about the environment is to preserve our communities. We as people see our communities as families, neighborhoods, cities, countries, and so on. We are inherently social beings. We crave human interaction. But communities are usually seen as made up of people. Really though, it's broader than this. It includes animals, it includes the environment, it includes corporations. This is because without all of these elements, we would not be able to thrive and prosper. This creates a duty to us as people to continue to preserve and protect our communities. And since the environment is part of that community, we have a duty to protect the environment. But how does this relate to corporations, since this is our duty as humans? Well, a corporation is a guest in our society. A corporation is a business entity that is a legal fiction created by law. And without this legal fiction, a corporation would not exist. And corporations are citizens. And just like human citizens, they have rights as well as obligations. And since we just established that human citizens have an obligation to protect communities and the environment, corporations, therefore, also have that same obligation. Corporations are not exempt from protecting and preserving our environment. Zara knows this. Zara has already committed themselves to protecting the environment, although we have shown that there are more options available and that more commitment needs to be made. Therefore, Zara has an obligation to commit themselves further. And our solution can set Zara to become one of the first large-scale fashion corporations to put the environment as one of their top priorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll start the question. As a member of the board, I appreciate that you have acknowledged the work that we have already been doing. I'm troubled by that acknowledgement being given, but you suggesting to us that moral outrage is a vulnerability. As we have been consistent in what we said we would do, it feels a little like moral outrage is really not an issue for us because we have handled ourselves with integrity thus far. So I'm wondering, of the solutions that you have presented, what, and the concerns that you've raised, what is the most important thing that you feel we need to do to increase our progress, understanding the financial limitations that any company might have?
Would you like to start us off, Megan?
Though we have taken strides in the sustainability department, it's been a really long road to get there. There's been several cases over the last few years where toxic chemicals were being used and boycotts were conducted. There were Greenpeace campaigns dedicated to getting those toxic chemicals out of Zara's clothes. And so I do think moral outrage is very important in avoiding it, because right now we're trying to get back you've dedicated yourself to this, and so now we're trying to come back from a place that wasn't so responsible, and people knew that, and that there was the moral outrage. And so we're continuously trying to increase the view of Zara as a company, because it did have some problems in the past. So people are hearing these promises from Zara now, but they don't necessarily trust them, and so we need to address that.
And in addition to this, Zara has pledged to become almost completely sustainable by the year 2020, and they're not on course for that. And that's where the problem lies. We need to drastically increase the rate at which we're using products. And you had asked us what in particular we need to do, and we have focused on using the material of Tencel. Now, the material of Tencel, I've shown in my financial section, is profitable because there is a demand for it, because it is higher quality, because consumers are willing to pay more for it. So that's what we need to do. Our long-term solution is to exclusively use Tencel as the material for our products.
Thank you.
So, from a business standpoint, you've talked a lot about Tencel, and I'm not familiar with this term, even though our company obviously sells it. Have you done any type of analysis of what percentage of our products could be made from Tencel, or are there limitations there?
Right, so Megan had talked about how many, it was 6.1 million units of Tencel products were sold, compared to, was it 28 million of cotton products? So we're looking at about a third of our products so far are using Tencel. One of my arguments was that one of the greatest benefits of Tencel is not only that it's sustainable, but it's scalable. It's made from plant cellulose. This is the most abundant organic compound, right? And we're sourcing this from plantations that plant these trees so that the cellulose can be extracted, right? So planting trees is something that's good for our environment, and it's not like we're going to run out of room to plant trees. So this is definitely scalable. We can continue to increase our usage.
But can it make all different fabrics and all different colors and all different styles, or is there a limitation there?
Not at that. For that, the Linsing Group, which is the company that invented Tencel and Refibra, has a line. So there's Tencel, which is the basic one, what started out, and then there's Refibra, which is completely circular. It uses post-consumer waste cotton mixed with the cellulose fibers to create a circular fiber that is also compostable, so it goes right back into the making more fiber. There's also a luxury line of Tencel products, so it uses a more closely woven fabric that's even more softer than Tencel. So there's so many different properties and other ways to make it. So it can be a luxury fabric, it can be everyday fabric like cotton, it can be dyed any color.
Yeah, and Zara also has a collection already that's devoted to Tencel use, and it's essentially the same products. But more ethically and environmentally made. So I don't think there's limitation to the types of outfits that can even be made.
And the products already range from athletic activewear to business attire and to more formal, elegant attire also. Those products are already being made.
And did you already address that? You may have already addressed this, so I apologize, but the 6% that we're doing with the Tencel line, what is the increase?
30%, I believe, is the number.
30%, sorry, right.
Around.
What is what's the increased price from using regular cotton to Tencel?
Right, so Tencel is going to cost us about 10 to 20% more on the retail. We'll have to charge 10 to 20% more on the retail price, but we have multiple studies from actual purchase data, not just from polls about consumers' intentions, that shows that consumers were willing to pay 20 to 30% more for these products. And our, also, to further supplement our argument, this product is trending. This Tencel stuff is popping up everywhere, right? So as it becomes more popular, people will be even more willing to pay just a little bit more.
Yeah, I have to consider the sort of conflict I feel regarding what is environmentally laudable and what is practical in terms of the survival of the company. So here's one of my main questions: is you referred twice to Apple and indeed in your presentation. Indeed, Apple has extreme customer loyalty. I certainly don't think of Apple as being a particularly environmentally sensitive company. Every year, like clockwork, we come up with a new iPhone, and then it looks like the previous iPhone is almost embarrassing. So we might find ourselves being looked upon as environmentally sensitive and out of business. We might lose a kind of customer loyalty that they are claiming we're going to get, and so that's what the thing that might concern me the most, actually.
So I had mentioned a statistic that 51% of customers indicated that they will be loyal to a company that uses cutting edge products. This is where I at least have equated the possibility of Tencel being the Apple of the sustainable fashion industry. So Apple gained a lot of its customer loyalty by innovating products, by introducing products that were extremely personalized and easy to use, right? So this product, we've mentioned advantages. It absorbs moisture better. There are also studies that show that people with dermatitis and different skin conditions react better to this fiber, right? So it's higher quality, even as business or athletic wear, this moisture absorption is extremely important. So that's where we equate them. We basically want to use, we figured out what the cutting edge material is. Apple had figured out what the cutting edge interface is, right? And so we need to capitalize that as soon as possible. If Apple hadn't done what they did, someone else would have developed an interface that was as easy to use as Apple. But Apple was the first one to do it, and so everyone, became popularized. Does that answer all of your question? I think I may have missed a portion of your question.
No, you got. Thank you for asking. You got the main gist, which is the parallel between Apple and Zara, and your key point is that innovation draws loyalty or can create loyalty.
For the survival of the company part of that question, Zara is holding itself out to be an ethical and environmentally aware company. So people are expecting this from Zara because it's all over your website, it's all over the clothing and sustainable materials practices that you're already developing. Zara, after the implementation of all of these practices, it's opened 51 net stores in all different countries, and it's added about 146 different online markets. So we're not losing business because of that. You can only stand to gain from it.
And to go off, especially your comparison between Apple and Zara, Apple, their customers are looking for innovation. Zara's customers, like Megan said, are looking for environmental sustainability. So in order to keep their loyalty to their consumers, they need to be innovative. But Zara, in order to keep their loyalty from their consumers, they need to be environmentally sustainable and innovative in that sense. So it's just two different versions of innovation. So that's why they would be a good comparison, because it's still innovation, it's just different kinds.
And it really is also innovation in the quality of the product and its usability, right?
I've got a concern about understanding the impact of what you feel is our greatest ethical vulnerability. Again, I appreciate that you're acknowledging what we're doing, but I'm hearing from you that we're not doing it fast enough. And I'm hearing that the social power and the moral outrage, beyond that, which I just think is kind of hyperbole, I want to know the bottom line of what you feel we need to do to increase trust with our customers. And I understand you're using sustainability as the driver of trust, but it would help me to understand, given the tremendous costs involved of the escalation of the speed that we're doing, what is your definition of what trust will look like for us?
So, Zara has pledged to become almost completely sustainable
Right.
by 2020, right? So, the way in which we've determined that this can be accomplished is through the use of tinsel products.
Understand that?
Right, so that's exactly what we want to do. What was the second part of your question?
I want to know,
The trust will come from, if Zara is making this pledge to become completely sustainable by 2020, the trust comes from that the customer trusts that Zara will uphold, that they will do this. So if they don't uphold this, the consumer loses trust because they can't trust. They can't be able to rely on what Zara, what you guys say anymore if you're not upholding to these standards that you are saying you are going to uphold to.
and you think escalation of what we're doing holds the key to our sustaining or our regaining trust?
Essentially, yes, because if you are pledging by 2020 that you'll be completely sustainable, that is 2 years away. So we have to ramp up. You have to ramp up how committed you are to the environment in order to uphold that and uphold the trust that your consumers have in you to even get to this idea of sustainability that you have.
And even since this introduction of these tinsel materials that now comprise 30% of their product line roughly, Megan mentioned that they've opened 51 net stores and many new online outlets, right? So the introduction of these materials has not prevented customers of other materials from still purchasing these products.
We have 5 minutes left, so you need to divide it up.
So, I've heard a lot about loyalty and the importance of loyalty with consumers, and you gave the example of Apple as being an entity that has a strong loyal base, and then what happened to Snapchat. So I guess my question is, we as Zara, we pride ourselves on being very trendy and up to the moment. We have competitors there, for example, H&M. Do we even know that our customer base is particularly loyal to this to our type of company, to where this is going to play such an important part in our business decisions? And do we have an idea of what the average length of time a customer spends with us?
Well, to address, it appears we do not have those statistics, but we do have the statistics that millennials and Gen Z, so the younger generation, are your top buyers of your products. And the younger generation has a greater awareness of global warming, and they're starting to care a lot about it, that if this is your audience and this is what they feel, they want a company, they will be loyal to a company that upholds to their environmental standards.
And
that answers your question.
Also, Zara isn't the only company that is employing initiatives, right, towards sustainability. So how do we differentiate ourselves? start using exclusively tinsel way before anyone else does. That's where the comparison with Apple comes in. That's how we want to establish loyalty by becoming the preeminent supplier of lyocell-based sustainable products.
Well, Zara's in a unique position because of its partnership with the Lansing Group, who manufactures tinsel. H&M is behind. They haven't even come up with the fabric yet. They're making all these new contests and stuff to make a competitor for our tinsel that we already have a relationship with. So Zara is in an extremely unique spot right now and needs to strike while the iron is hot in order to not only meet your promises, but also to become the first.
And Zara, may I add that Zara partnered with Lansing Group to develop Refibra, right? And this was the material we talked about that uses waste from cotton products and also the cellulose, right? So this new kind of hybrid material was actually developed in conjunction with the Lansing Group, right? So we are in a unique position to take advantage of this and capitalize on this emerging market.
Okay, since our time is tight, I do have one last question, which is just I really see the point that you're making on this. I'm going to make a comment, but which is just the idea of sustainability in fashion is something that's I'm having a little bit of a hard time wrapping my head around it. But I'll tell you, when you talk about outrage, I see it and I observe it, and I know the damage it can cost. And it is connected to ethics. And it's often about women in Bangladesh, and it's about unsafe working conditions. And I have to confess that I'm just not sure. Does this approach you're taking in any way relate to that? Are we going to be so focused on just revamping our whole production line in what is, I think, an unrealistic time frame? 2020 is a year and a half from now. Where there's a lot of other vulnerabilities out there, and we may not be prepared for this, but I just wonder.
Yeah. So the beauty of tinsel is that it's already fair trade certified, which means that it is produced through ethical means, right? And we just talked about how we're in this unique position with our partnership with Lansing Group. I mean, I don't have the statistics on the possibility of doing this by 2020, but we really need to, vamp up and try to get there as quickly as possible. And I would imagine that if Zara made that projection, that Zara saw the possibility for it, and maybe that's why they've established such a close partnership with Lansing Group. So maybe you are.
Excuse me, any final quick comments from either of you
Well,
about the ethical impact?
Yeah, well, addressing that, Zara has run into ethical dilemmas and problems. There's an example, Zara paid a company to make their products, but the company did not pay their employees. So Zara is saying, we paid the company, but it's not up to us to pay the employees. So that is an example that if people really got a hold of it and it got on social media, like it could with, like it did with Snapchat or it did with H&M, it could have blown up. So we know that you are ethical in a lot of ways, but sometimes you can slip up and this could happen. So in order to avoid this outrage, you need to become a little more ethical than you currently are.
Any quick comment from you regarding the ethics? Thank you. Now we're going to switch into our role as judges, and our goal is really to help you for tomorrow, because you've got the 10-minute, and it's important that we want to give you the feedback possible to help with that.